Hey folks, Scotty Roberts here, and I have a St. Patrick's Day tradition that's going to live on this Monday night, the 17th of March, with my special guest, my oldest son, Sam Roberts. It's a tradition that we've carried on for years, and I did not want to let it pass by. So while we're still going to be up for the long-awaited Epic Life podcast launch, there's one tradition I can't let slide. And that's St. Paddy's Day. It's coming, and despite my podcast launch being postponed until after my April 16th throat surgery, yes, the 16th now, I announced that it was the 9th, and that same day they called and they changed it to the 16th. So after April 16th, and my throat is healed up, we'll be able to go into the Epic Life podcast launch. But I'm not going to skip out on this, one of my favorite annual traditions. And it's so funny that a year has already gone by since our last one, where Sam and I imbibed a little too much Irish whiskey and sang too many Irish songs. But you'll still want to join us. Now, mark your calendars for Monday, March 17th, because Sam and I will be hosting a special St. Paddy's Day broadcast. And if you've been around for a while, you know this has become a time, I hate the word cherished, but for us, a cherished event and an honored tradition with Sam and me. And this year is going to be no different. So expect great conversation, great history, great legends, great singing, great whiskey imbibing, and plenty of that good old Irish spirit. And it's going to be broadcast live via webcam, via stream over on my YouTube channel. And I will include a link for it when I put up a ad specific for it. But it's over on youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And you can find us Monday at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. That would be 10 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Mountain Time, and 7 p.m. Pacific Time. And all of our listeners over in Australia, it'll be the next day in the afternoon live. So we want to see you there. But now what about Epic Life? Where's it going? Yes, the Epic Life podcast is still coming. Stronger and better than ever. My surgery was moved to the 16th, as I said a little earlier. And once I'm fully recovered, which they say, the docs say, won't take very long, we'll finally get things kicked off the way it deserves. And then we'll be here and a force to be reckoned with. But until then, let's have some fun on St. Paddy's Day. Join Sam and me for a St. Patrick's Day broadcast you won't want to miss. See you on Monday night. Now, until then, listen to this old archived clip. Well, it's not too old. It's from October 10th of 2022, and it is about the Tuatha De Danann, the mythology, the Irish mythology of the Tuatha. So listen in for a few minutes, and that's coming up right now.
Hello, my name is Patrick Sullivan. I'm a boxer and a Guinness drinker. Now, it's come to my attention that you lads in America only drink Guinness on special occasions. So let me tell you about the special occasion that finds me drinking a pint of Guinness. I was fighting Michael the Hammer Halleck when the referee stopped the fight in the 4th round due to excessive bleeding. As the referee led poor Hammer, covered in blood, to his corner, all I could think about was I was going to win for the first time in 57 professional fights. However, the referee soon made the discovery that it was my blood covering old Hammer. What can I say? I'm a bleeder by nature. Now, you might be thinking, and 57's not much of a special occasion. And that's my point exactly. You can drink Guinness any day. Sure, it's dark, but it drinks smooth and easy. You may even find it refreshes your spirit. So don't be so precious with your pints. Grab a Guinness, because it's good to drink.
Guinness Stout, imported by Guinness Bass Import Company, Stamford, Connecticut.
Oh, and if you think the Irish only bleed Kelly Green, just come to one of my fights.
And so in Irish mythology, It's said that a race of kings descended from the heavens to the ancient pre-Celtic culture of Ireland were the Anunnaki, the Tuatha Dé, Anu. And these tall, bright, shining creatures were elegant and beautiful, and they brought with them the secret knowledge of the gods. Think of how Tolkien depicted his elves. They were tall and bright and shining, and usually the long golden hair. This is very possibly the same type of being that Tolkien was making reference to. And these tall, bright, shining creatures were elegant, they were beautiful, and they brought with them the secret knowledge of the gods. And while the Tuatha represent a caste of Irish elemental beings, there are also accounts of them being nothing more than flesh and blood conquerors, one of the ancient races that were inhabiting Ireland. And they came down and they invaded from the 4 northern cities of Fallius, Gorius, Mirius, and Phineas, where they acquired all their occult skills and their magical attributes. Now, the Tuatha Dé Danann, as is the proper term, roughly but imprecisely translates as peoples or children of the goddess Danu. And in the Old Irish Tuat, it means people, tribe, nation. De is the genitive case of dia, meaning god or goddess, supernatural being, object of worship. And they're often referred to simply as the Tuatha, or the Tua, or the Tuatha Dé, which was also used in early Christian Irish texts as a name for the Israelite diaspora. You know, the diaspora is after the sacking of Jerusalem and the conquering back in 70 AD of Rome, the Jews spread out. They became the diaspora. They were dispersed throughout the known world at that time. They dispersed and they migrated to other areas in groups. And so many early Irish Christian texts thought of the Tuatha Dé Danann as the Israelite diaspora, those who had scattered around the earth over the centuries, which in and of itself is a very interesting historical reference, as Danu has also been rendered Anu. And the reference, if not already obvious, creates this really compelling, interesting link between Israel and ancient Mesopotamian mythologies, being the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki being like what you would think of as the Olympians to the Greeks, the Anunnaki were to the ancient Sumerian peoples, or Mesopotamian peoples, Sumer Akkad, and many of those Euphratean cultures that had risen up around there. So, according to the Leber Gabala Erin, the Book of the Taking of Ireland, the Middle Irish title of a loose collection of poems and prose narratives recounting the mythical origins and the history of the Irish, from the creation of the world down to the Middle Ages, the Tuatha descended to Ireland in dark clouds, it says. And they landed on the mountains of and I don't know all my old Gaelic pronunciations of this in Ireland, but the Conmaisni, the Conmacni reign in Connacht, and bringing a darkness over the sun for 3 days and 3 nights. And other versions of the stories, which are less steeped in the mistiness of legend, the Tuatha were flesh and blood invaders. And they landed in a fleet of sea vessels on the shores of what is modern-day Connemara, Ireland. And as if to seal their resolve to invade and to inhabit, they burned all their ships so as to provide themselves no mode of retreat. And the rising smoke from the fires is said to be the basis for the myth that tells of their arrival in smoke from the skies that blocked out the sun for 3 days. So there's a poem in the Leber Gabala Erin which says of their arrival, it says this: "It is God who suffered them, though he restrained them. They landed with horror, with lofty deed. in their cloud of mighty combat of spectres upon a mountain of Conmechny of Connacht. Without distinction to discerning Ireland, without ships a ruthless course, the truth was not known beneath the sky of stars, whether they were of heaven or of earth. As the ancient poetry says. So after a series of wars, it's said that the mythical Tuatha De Danann were defeated and subsequently receded into the Hollow Hills, eventually becoming known as the Elven folk of Celtic lore. Now, this to me is really interesting stuff. After all these wars between the Tuatha De Danann and the inhabitants of ancient Ireland, they were defeated and receded. They, in a sense, said, we're done, we're receding, we're leaving this plane, and they receded back into the Hollow Hills. And the topic of the Hollow Hills in Irish mythology or Celtic mythology is a pretty packed and padded topic all by itself. We'll have to take that one up one of these days. Tuatha De Danann are actually looked upon by Irish people as a discrepancy. Our true mythology is from the land and under the land. I just talked about this with somebody yesterday. A friend of mine who's been on this show in the past, Irishman, I want to say he lives north of Dublin, Barry Fitzgerald. Years ago, he was on the show Ghost Hunters International. And Barry's been on this show. He wrote the foreword for the new release of Tam O'Hare because of the things that he talks about from the land and under the land. Barry talks about, he's done a lot of research into the caves and the supernatural that's associated with the caves north of where he lives. He talks about the things that lie beneath our feet. This is the true mythology. And what's interesting about the Tuatha is that it is said the Tuatha De Danann, when they came to Ireland, that they receded into the earth, into the Hollow Hills. And they eventually became known as the Elven folk of Celtic lore. And it's interesting to note that the prefix El of Elven is a derivative of the ancient Sumerian Elil and the Hebrew Elohim, both being proper pronouns for the names of gods, El and El. And then the Elven folk. There exists this startlingly recognizable similarity between the mythological Tuatha De Danann and the whole Nephilim mythology, as they appear to be etymological descendants in the transmission of religious thought. Elil and Ea, Enki, were the linguistic predecessors of Elohim and Yahweh, Jehovah. In the ancient Sumerian culture, Elil, the chief god of the Anunnaki, and his brother god, Enki, also known as Ea, that those two names were carried into the Canaanite culture centuries later. Elil became Elohim. Ea became Yahweh, Jehovah. And so this carrying over of those mythologies into what we recognize even in Judeo-Christianity. And this brings up the big question, which of course itself is a whole nother topic. Are Elohim and Jehovah two separate gods? They seem to be listed separately. They're mentioned. Elohim was the god of Eden, the god of creation, and so on. But eventually came Yahweh, the God, the Savior God, the messianic type, the pre-type of the Messiah. And were these two different characters in the Old Testament? And if they are, what does that do to our understanding of monotheology? It's also interesting to note that the Tuatha De Danann are basically the basis for J.R.R. Tolkien's tall, elegant, bright, shining, elven people of Lothlorien. Tolkien had his finger on the pulse of a shadowy history and was more than obviously hailing to those historical roots.